So, welcome to the second episode of Lionhead Forge. I'm John Van Houten,
I'm Truett Atchley.
and we're really glad you're here with us today. We've got a great lineup of podcasts that we're going to be doing in the future. So, y'all stay tuned and just be sure to keep checking out the channel in our newsletter. And we have a great lineup coming for you. Today, we're actually going to talk about your story, Truett, and just kind of how things came to be. So, Truett Atchley is the founder of Lionhead Ministries. And one of the things I wanted to do is just I've known you for a long time, so
Right.
I know a bit of your story, but I'd like to hear a little bit about just, your personal story and then your professional story. And then ultimately, how the Lord put the vision for this men's ministry on your heart and how this has come to be.
Okay. Sounds good. I'll try not to be too boring. But so I grew up in St. Petersburg, Florida. So born and raised there, and grew up normal family. My mom stayed at home. My dad was an attorney in town. And so, great upbringing, living down in Florida, similar to you, near the beach, everything's nice and sunny. So, good life out on the boats, having a good time, going to school, all those great and wonderful things. So, but I grew up slightly different when it came to church. Didn't go to your standard run-of-the-mill Baptist, Methodist church. Went to a church called the Worldwide Church of God. So a little different for any of y'all out there that have experienced that church. Not necessarily not preaching the love of Jesus, more legalistic. So grew up in that from the time I was born until about the time I was 17, so junior, senior in high school. And at that time, we departed that church. And so at that point, I was kind of just like, hey, man, I'm kind of done with all this. Like, wasn't really on board with religion or church. And, I will say I did have a great foundation of the Bible and what's in there, but the gospel of Jesus and the love of Jesus really wasn't taught necessarily. Just understanding that he was, born of a virgin, lived a perfect life, died on the cross and rose again, but not the salvation, love, forgiveness. We were very much living by the rules or else type of thing, not by my parents, but, the church, a lot of Old Testament rules and, things like that. But it caused me to rebel at a young age. It's no fault of my parents. I just decided that, because we were kind of locked down a little bit when it came to the church. Sunset Friday night, sunset Saturday night, it was only church people, really no outside influence, no radio, no TV, none of those things. So some of my friends were a lot older than me, and, we ended up, drinking at a young age, smoking cigarettes, having a good time. So once I got to high school and, or kind of a little later in high school, and we left the church, and I was just like, man, I'm done with this. And on into college, and I was like, I just don't care about any of this. Let's just go have as much fun as we can. And, met a bunch of good people in college, but made a lot of bad choices, just not living, not focused on school, just really focused on having a good time, like a lot of people were.
Yeah, so where'd you go to college?
University of South Florida. Okay. So went over there, didn't really want to go to college. Wasn't sure what I wanted to do. I really wanted to be in the military, but my dad always said, if you're going to go in the military, go in as an officer. And I didn't understand that at the time. And I was just like, oh yeah, whatever. I was like, you just don't want to be a grunt. You don't want to be out there doing the work. But it was probably some of the best advice he ever gave me, because I did end up going into the military, and we'll talk about that later. But so I went to USF, and, good school, not a great place for me to focus. Just having fun. Spent 6 years in college on and off to get a non-technical degree. Ended up with a degree in international studies. But I had decided my last couple of years of school that I had really no interest in pursuing anything that USF had available to study. it's all I ever really wanted to do was be a pilot. When I was a little kid, my mom took me to I don't even think it's there anymore, a famous bookstore in near downtown St. Pete called Haslam's Bookstore. And, huge place, tons of really cool books. And I was never big on reading. So I went and found this book, and I think it's actually on the shelf over there. It's called the Aircraft Encyclopedia. It's a little paperback book, and it's got every civilian, military, helicopter, airplane known to man in there, and all the stats, like max altitude, airspeed, what its purpose is, all these things. And I just loved aircraft. I just thought it was the coolest thing. I always wanted to be a pilot.
So how old were you when you got that book?
Oh gosh, I was probably like 6,
Wow. Okay.
maybe 7, something like that. So, but yeah, I was just young, but loved the pictures, loved the aircraft. It's always kind of my thing. And so my last 2 years in school, I was like, well, maybe I can do the military, and looked at maybe joining an ROTC program, but just it never really caught. And I was like, and then I went to the recruiting station and talked to a couple of different services, and they're just like, man, you got to get your degree. And I was like, okay. So buckled down, started focusing. It also helped. I met my now wife kind of during this time, as I was like, I got to get my life in order or whatever. And she actually bought me my first flying lesson. So I was working at the local airport. I decided I had moved back to St. Pete. I'd left Tampa and was commuting my last year and a half, and went down to the local airport, a little place called Bay Air, and right on the water, Albert Whitted Airport in downtown St. Pete. Cool little airport. The 1836 runway out there has water on 3 sides. You got sailboats, you got the bay. Really cool spot. And so they had a charter company out there. They had an FBO, which had the gas, and commuter planes could come in and get gas, and we'd run them to the pier to get food or whatever. So that's how I started pumping gas and washing airplanes. And then the guy who owned the FBO was a really neat guy. And he extended for guys that he kind of saw something that was interested in flying that worked for him. He would extend you pretty much somewhat of an unlimited line of credit to go learn to fly, because he owned the flight school too. So, I'd go down there, and after my wife bought me my first lesson, I talked to one of the instructors and kind of picked out who I wanted to fly with, because I kind of knew them all. And started my path to becoming a pilot. So got my private pilot's license with 44 hours, and then proceeded to fly almost every day. I'd call my wife, and I'm just like, hey, I'm getting off at 8 o'clock. We got one of the planes. We're going to go, fly up the coast and we'd fly up to Brooksville a lot, because it was an 8,000 foot uncontrolled runway or something like that. And we just go out there, me and another guy, and my wife would sit in the back, and we would just do touch and goes and little landing competitions, and then just fly back. Because flying at night's the coolest if you've ever done it. Flying over the city all lit up is just super cool. Flying NVGs at night, military equipment, it's even better. But yeah, we always loved doing that. So built up my time. And then I managed to graduate, but my goal was to be an airline pilot initially. I wanted the military side of the house, but I was like, there's this, back in the early 2000s, late 90s, there was the airline pilot shortage. All the Vietnam era guys are retiring, is what they were saying. It's just well, I'm going to go do that. My neighbor across the street was a Delta pilot, so I would talk to him. But then September 11th happened, and all those pilots, one good friend of mine that I flew with early on, he was way ahead of me in his pilot progression. He was in a regional carriers introduction class, and they came in and they said, hey, Twin Towers just got hit. Y'all are furloughed. We don't know that we'll ever call you back. I think he's a UPS or FedEx pilot now. So he got to continue on his path. He went through corporate for a few years. But that pipeline died. You used to be able to get into the regional airlines with 1,000 hours total time and 100 hours in multi-engine. And then that was gone. And I was like, okay. And I was banner towing at the time. So I had gotten my single engine, multi-engine instrument commercial. And then I started to get my CFI, my certified flight instructor, because you got to have a time building job. If you're not going to be in the military or something, you got to tow banners, fly, skydivers, be a flight instructor, something like that. It's something, because the aviation industry is kind of ruled by insurance. You got to have certain hours, and it's not negotiable in order to get certain jobs. So you got to get these time building jobs. So I did one lesson to be a flight instructor. So I was told, hey, go home and prepare a lesson plan for, I can't remember what it was. And I came back to the instructor and I'm like preparing and I'm going through the lesson and he just keeps, well, why? Why is this? Why is that? And I'm just like, you know what? I'm done with this. I said, this is so annoying. I don't feel like explaining this to a million people, being a flight instructor. I just want to fly. I don't want to watch people fly. So we wrapped up the lesson. I said, yeah, I don't want to do this anymore. And I walked 3 hangars down to the banner tow operation. And I said, hey, man, you guys hiring? And they're like, oh, yeah, we'll give you a job. Go get with Billy in maintenance and he'll do your tail dragger endorsement. You had to do like 3 flights with him because we were flying old J3 Cubs at the time, just pieces of junk. And so
no offense to the J3 Cub
they're
folks out there.
They're awesome aircraft. Those were junk. They were barely held together, but it was fun flying. So I got my my 3 flights with Billy. He signs me off, and my first day on the job, I'm flying from St. Pete to Raymond James Stadium to fly for a Bucks game. And I'm terrified.
So you're flying banners at the stadium or someone to the stadium?
We're picking them up at our airport, like you pick them up on the fly.
Okay, the banners.
And then you fly over to Raymond James and circle the stadium during the game.
Okay.
So leaving St. Pete.
That's your first job.
Yes, my first getting paid to fly job.
Okay.
And so no transponder, this little J3 Cub with a big old sign on the back. And I'm flying in the Class B airspace, which is the busiest airspace there is for those who aren't familiar, and flying past the extended landing center line of Tampa International, hit Dale Mabry, which is the main road that goes up to Raymond James, climb up to 1,000 feet and then circle the stadium. And I was just like, man, I was scared, just nervous, and just because you're by yourself, there's no backup. There were other guys up there and we were on comms together, but still, it's just kind of all on you. Like, don't mess this up. So did that. And so that was probably like 2001 time frame. And then I get married in 2002. And I was like, man, I gotta get something going here. So wife and I talked a lot and I was like, hey, I think I want to do this military thing. And she's like, okay. She's like, I'm on board. Let's figure it out. So I started going back to the recruiting stations and talking to the guys. I had my degree at this point. So I talked to the Air Force, the Navy, and the Army. And a lot of the guys that trained me were Army warrant officers. So I was aware of the Army warrant officer program. So the Navy, they just wanted guys with engineering degrees, had no interest in anybody, even if you were a pilot. So I was like, okay, that's out. So the Air Force was interested. They're like, okay, you don't have an engineering degree, but you're already a rated pilot, fixed wing guy. I had like 800 flight hours. And they're just like, okay, yeah, we'll put you through the board. You got to take all the tests and everything and do your physical. And if you make it through that, then, we'll give you a slot. And the Army was like, yeah, man, we'll take you. And they wanted to put me in through OCS, through the officer program. And I was just like, well, will that guarantee me flight? And they said, no, you're going to compete. And I was like, man, I'm not going to get beat out by some nerd that reads a map better than me or can do some like ground thing better than me. And he gets to go to flight school. And then I'm like an infantry lieutenant or something like that. I was like, tell me about this warrant officer thing. And they're like, oh, you know about that? And I said, yeah. I was like going in straight from the street. They call it street to seat, high school to flight school or whatever. And they're like, yeah, we can do that. They're like, it's not easy. Like, you're going to have to go through all this stuff. You're going to have to go get interviewed in front of a board with a bunch of people. And, if you make it, then you go to basic training like every other guy who enlists in the military. And I was like, yeah, let's go. Let's do this. So I had a great recruiter, staff sergeant down in St. Pete. And the thing that I didn't know at the time is there was nothing that the recruiter got for me going in. It was like a battalion credit or something like that, recruiting battalion credit. This dude worked his butt off to get me in. I mean, driving me to my flight physical at MacDill, all the things we had to, this guy was lights out. And so I do my interview. The guys are just like, yeah, you'll be a good fit for this program. And they even told me, they're like, in the interview, they're like, you're getting a slot, but don't walk out there in the room and act like you got one. Just don't say anything and walk out, because there was like 30 guys in the room waiting. So I leave. I get a call from my recruiter. He's just like, hey, man, you're going. I was like, okay. So I think it was like July or something like that. He's like, come down, we're going to sign your paperwork. I went into the late entry program where it's like you're going in, but you're waiting for your date to depart, but you're like on the hook. So I do all that stuff, and then I get a departure date for October. So October 2003. So I head to Fort Sill, Oklahoma, and do basic training there. It's great, it's basic training. So it's all male basic training, which, by the way, if you ever want to know why women were created by God, go to an all male basic training. Like, you're just cavemen. Like, women are much needed in this world, because if not, we're just unbridled, clowns. So do that, finish, get done in January, go to Warrant Officer School, Fort Rucker, Alabama, do 6 weeks there, have a 4-day pass, get my wife up to Fort Rucker, and then we're in Aeromed, which is your first class in flight school, and then we're off and running. So do that, graduate, did have a little mishap in flight school. It set me back a couple of days. My last flight in MVGs, before my last night's check ride, we clipped a tree with the tail rotor doing a masking unmasking maneuver. So they ended up, I had to like sit for 2 weeks while they did the investigation. It's not really anybody's fault. We hit a dead tree, which are hard to see underneath MVGs, a little sapling and an LZ. Anyway, so I get done, we finish up everything, and then I had orders to Fort Bragg. Well, my wife's pregnant at the time. And so I have a follow-on course, because at the time, I don't know if they're still doing this, you had to do some type of like doctrinal course when you left. So I got assigned the medevac doctrine course. And so I was like trying to get out of this course, because I was like, why don't you just let us go to Fort Bragg? I was like, she can have the baby there, and then I'm already there. I can get situated and everything. And they're like, nope, you have to do this course. I'm like, okay. So I sit around and wait, and I was like, but I can't leave. Like, she's going to be like 2 to 3 weeks from having this baby. They're like, oh, once you're finished with the course, just stay here till she has the baby. And once the baby gets a clean bill of health, you can go to Fort Bragg. I'm like, okay, that sounds good. So I ended up hanging out in like a hold status until she had the baby. And they basically just told me to go home, which I had to call a lieutenant like every day and just be like, yeah, I'm alive. She's like, okay, she had the baby yet? No. Okay. Well, call me tomorrow. Okay. Got it. So I didn't have to do all the stupid little details you have to do when you're on hold. So she has the baby. We get to Fort Bragg, and, life's good. First unit, I get assigned to the 57th Med. So the original medevac unit out of Vietnam. So, and I get there, and they're like, hey, we have deployment orders. We're leaving in October. And I'm like,
So
okay.
when did you get there? Like, so you had to leave in October for the deployment orders, but how
Mm.
long were you there before you?
I got there in May. Okay. Fix this thing real quick. But yeah, May of 2005. Yeah, because Will was born in April. So it was May of 2005 that we got there. Just new equipment, ladies and gentlemen. So yeah, May of 05. So we had orders in September. And yeah, September, October, sometime like that in 05. Then we hit the ground. So did a year in Iraq flying medevac. So one of the greatest experiences of my life, with some of the greatest guys and girls. Just an opportunity to do that mission. Initially I wanted to go guns when I was in flight school. I wanted an Apache slot. My best friend in flight school got Apaches. And when I got aircraft choice, there were none available. So I was like, let's go Blackhawks. So went 60s, and then got the medevac mission, which, like I said, was, it was tough, but it was good. Just a great experience. So, did that, came home, when my son was about a year and a half old. So I left when he was about 6 months old. Came back and did a few more months at Fort Bragg, and then got reassigned to Fort Polk, Louisiana. So anybody out there has ever been to Fort Polk, Louisiana? Sorry. Join me in your sorrows. It's a tough place to be stationed just because there's not a lot to do. But I will say the unit I was in, again, it was in a great unit. Great guys. We did a ton of flying. Got the Lakota transition while I was there, so I got to fly that aircraft brand new right off the production line. So that was really cool, and that's actually what got me to Huntsville. So I was finishing up my time in the Army, and so we're talking like 2009 timeframe, and working on my master's degree, and we ended up having an issue with the aircraft we had at Polk, and so I got to know the guys in the PM office. and they were down a lot, and we were talking. And so, long story short, I was like, hey man, I'm getting out of the Army. I was like, you guys got any jobs there in Huntsville? Because I'd been to Huntsville a few times for training, and I was like, man, this is actually a pretty nice place. And so ended up getting a job as a contractor working in the Lakota project office in utility helicopters doing acquisition stuff. So did that, and then shortly thereafter, a couple years later, I moved to air traffic control PM where we met. Second day on the job, I think we went travel to Orlando, and got to meet that whole crew that we're all still friends. So that was a lot of fun. So and then for the rest of my career, I've just bounced between being a support contractor in an office, being an operations director corporately, doing various things to the point in 2023, founded my own company. And so we've been at that now for a few years. And so it's been an interesting road to hoe. And then, we looked at in 2024, we were looking at starting a nonprofit associated with the company. And I was just, as I thought and prayed through it and what do we want this to look like, I decided I wasn't going to have it affiliated with the company necessarily. It wasn't going to be like the FDS Foundation. I wanted it to be something completely separate. And so we ended up founding Lionhead Ministries out of that. So, yeah, that's kind of the personal,
Yeah.
professional summary.
Sure. No, I appreciate that. And so even before you founded the company and before you started Lionhead, I know from years ago when you and I, because we've known each other a long time, you've always had what I would call a burden, but not in the bad way, for missions, right?
Yeah.
You would talk about, hey, would it be great to go hike the Himalayas or, go to, the ends of the earth and reach those unreachable folks.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I know you had, very much a passion for that. So when did you start really feeling that?
So my pull towards ministry started when I was in the Army. So actually, when I was getting out and I was finishing up my master's, it was probably 2 years out, and I told my wife, I was like, "Hey, I think I want to go to seminary. I think I want to be a preacher." And she's like, "Oh, all right, that sounds good." We were very involved in the church we were going to at the time,
So
and
Lisa sounds very supportive. She was cool about you going to the military, now she's cool going to seminary.
she's always had my back 100%. She'll also yank me back when I get a little too off the rails, and she's like, dude, you gotta stop it, like, enough already, you're doing too many things. When I was young, I was the king of trying to do too much in one day. I missed one of her friends rehearsal dinners for her wedding because I tried to fly to Marathon, Florida and back during lobster season in a day and got caught by a thunderstorm and stuck in Marathon, and I missed the rehearsal dinner. I don't even think we were married at the time, or maybe we'd just been married. Oh, she was not happy with me. So I've had to learn, like, be a little better with your time. Don't try and pack so much in, and remember her too. Like, don't just try and run with scissors all the time. So, yeah.
So
So,
seminary.
yeah. So seminary, right? So we didn't have a whole lot of money. My grandmother had just gifted us a check for a little bit of cash, and I told her, I said, hey, let's take this money and let's go on a road trip and let's go visit all these seminaries. Now, my grandfather, he was a Southern Baptist preacher, like local missions preacher in Tennessee, and he went to Southwestern. So that was my first stop. So we went to Southwestern, we went to Beeson at Samford, we went to, I can't remember what the one was at Mercer in Atlanta, and then we went to Southeastern. So we toured all these places, and I was just like, okay. I was like, this is it. I was like, this is what I'm going to do. I even went back and told the guys in the unit, I was like, yeah, I'm going to go be a preacher. And they were like, oh, okay, man, that sounds good. Like, get after it, whatever you want to do. They were always cool. And then I just started, there just some doubts started to seep in. And I'm just like, man, should I do this? Like, is God really calling me to do this? And so I went to the associate pastor that was kind of a mentor of mine at this church. And I was like, hey, man, I was like, I have a job lined up. I'm finishing my master's, but I want to go to seminary. And he's like, let me tell you something. He's like, church leadership and everything has tons of guys that, like, that's all they have. Like, and he told me a story about how he was a carpenter by trade. Yeah, go figure. And when he was in between churches, he took a job in Iraq as a carpenter, building all those walkways and stuff you'd see all over the place, because there was no shortage of plywood and saws, because we built all kinds of stuff while we were over there. But he spent a year over there, and he's like, you need to take this job in Huntsville, finish your master's degree, and if you still feel called to go to seminary, he's like, guess what, man? Your GI Bill's still there, and it'll still be there. And so I took the job and just never thought about going back. I was just kind of on this trajectory, on this path, and I was like, yeah, I'll just keep going how I'm going. And then the church that, I attend now, they do a lot of mission stuff. And I was like, man, I really want to do this. And I want to go to some of these places that are hard. And in another church, I had reached out to the missions pastor and tried to be like, hey, man, I want to be involved. I want to do something. I'll make phone calls. I'll send emails or whatever. And, sometimes it goes, he's busy. People get busy. Things get lost. I probably should have followed up with an email. Whatever. It just never happened. And then I was supposed to go on a mission trip to, it was to Nepal. Mm-hmm. And COVID happened. And I'm like, man, I'm finally I got picked for this trip. You had to be physically fit. We had to turn in times for these workouts that they gave us, because it was going to the foothills and hiking most of the time and going to these remote villages. And so I was doing the workouts and, trying to make sure I was not going to be the weak link in this trip. Just have my passport.
To set some context, 3 years prior to that, you had told me, hey, I want to go on a mission trip. I want to go to a foreign mission trip. And I know you were engaging with different church leaders, like the other church, even with the church that we were both at the time. And for whatever reason, the opportunity never came. And then finally, 3 years later, you're getting the opportunity to go to Nepal. So I know it was on your heart for a long time.
It has been. And it's funny because you look at those opportunities and you're just like, I feel like, God, you've laid this on my heart. Mm-hmm. But why isn't it happening? Why do the doors continually get shut? You think when God lays something on your heart, it's like, well, he's just going to pave the way for it. Right. Man, that ain't how it works. There's a lot of refining, and there's a lot of, well, I thought this. Well, no, it's probably something else. So COVID happened. We're right up into the last minute, and there's hey, we can go, but we may not be able to come back in the timeline that we're looking. We may get stuck over there because the rules are just constantly changing. So we end up canceling the trip, and it doesn't get rescheduled. So that was in that 21 time frame, something like that. So then I just kind of carry on, start my company and move along. And so then when the foundation comes up, so a lot of this, you think you're doing one thing, but God's setting you up for something else. Not setting you up in a bad way, setting you up. He's preparing you. And so I spend 2025. So started the company in 23, 24, a little bit of growth. 25, things kind of are stale for various reasons in the defense world. And so I lean in real hard. I'm just like, hey, God, I want this company to be successful. What's going on in my life? What do I need to clean up, clean out, to be a better leader, to be prepared, more prepared to be a good Christian leader. And so laid some stuff on my heart, cleaned some stuff up, changed some things, and just some simple things like just how I get up in the morning. Before, I'd set my alarm in enough time to get up, eat breakfast, and get out the door. Completely changed that. Get up at 4:30, Bible study, quiet time, prayer, and then work out. So mind, body, and spirit before anybody else is up in the house, get it going, get right, and start your day. And I don't do it every day. I mean, I didn't do it this morning, but that's the goal. And so doing those things and just, trying to see where I needed to clean things up and do things differently. So I'm more prepared to hear him and what he wants from me. And because if you're just running around in sin, you can read the Bible all day long, but you're not processing it. You're not hearing him. So, just going through that process, and then I'm just thinking about it. And then, my business partner and I, we keep talking about this foundation. It's like, what do you want this to look like? And I said, man, I really think this needs to be like a men's ministry. And I'm not going to make it like a subsidiary of the company. I want it to be its own standalone thing. And so that started the conversation with our other friend, John, who will be on the podcast at some point. And, he's been in ministry a long time. And I was like, hey, man, I really think we need to do this thing. And he's just like, okay. He's like, I'll pray about it. Let's keep talking about it. So, John he thinks things through. He's a detail oriented guy. And so he spent a good amount of time thinking about it and then making suggestions of, who needs to be involved. And he was just like, hey, man, you need to talk to John Van Houten. And I was just like, that's a perfect idea. So when we established Lionhead, the goal was, to start this men's Bible study. Because, when you start with nothing, you don't have any money, you don't have a building, you don't have, we don't have a church. Not that we're not a church, but we don't really have anything. So it's like, well, what do we do? And John's like, well, we need to do a men's Bible study. And I was like, that's a great idea. So we reach out to everybody we know and we start, get this Bible study going. It was just January of this year, 2026, that we kicked it off. And so we've got other aspects that we wanted to launch to be part of this. The podcast, we want to start doing some mission work and things like that, both locally and overseas, doing some of those hard things in those hard places. But what kind of led me back to your question to, I don't even know if you asked this question, but what led my mindset with Lionhead is I look at the guys that served overseas, that have gone and done hard things. And I always wondered, I'm just like, man, why'd you build me this way? Like, I always had a drive to be in the military. I loved G.I. Joes when I was a kid, Star Wars, the battles, like doing something more with your life. But then in the military, you're doing some of that. There's some silliness too, what we consider dumb stuff, but it's all purposeful towards the mission for one reason or another, whether you understand it or not. Your commander understands it, hopefully. But when you get out and you lose that mission and you're sitting in a cube every day and you're just like, man, why did he build me this way to park me in a cube? I was like, I like my job. Don't get me wrong. I like helping people. I like helping the advancement of what we're doing for our country, military wise, and to keep our guys safe while they're on the battlefield. But when you're not in it, you're just like, man, you're yearning for something more. And I was like, he built us this way for a reason. And that reason's to pursue his kingdom. And if we got all the guys that have this mindset and this drive and refocused on Jesus and what it means to be a kingdom man and live for him, Jesus being the foundation, everything else comes around it. And, we tend to just want to sit in our house and, kind of quietly do our thing. And, yeah, you get involved in church here and there, and some churches have great men's ministries, but some guys don't want to go to church. And that's what we've kind of found through starting this Bible study is there's some guys that just have so much baggage that they're just like, man, I don't ever want to set foot in there. I don't feel like I belong there for one reason or another. Everybody's got a different story. But they're looking for something. They're looking for that community and that place to understand Jesus and what it means to be a kingdom man and live your life and to disciple to others. And so it's been really neat to see the last 6 months and just hear guys' stories. So in our Bible study, we give people the opportunity to give their testimony. And it's not like open mic night where everybody's just like, hey, me next. Yeah, it's pre-coordinated. Guys volunteer and we reach out to them. But the stories have been incredible with these guys. And it gives other people a chance to go, okay, well, I'm not alone. When we opened it up to like college students earlier in the year after we've been going for a few months, and my thoughts were just like, these younger guys need to hear this stuff, man. Because you see people that are successful. It's just like you see a successful business person. And you're just like, oh, it must be nice. It's like, man, you have no idea what the first like 5 to 10 years were like, where you're barely making payroll and there's 1,000 little things out there that can kill you. I mean, I got a saying I used to have, and I've added to it. I used to say there's two things you can't read enough books about, you can't talk to enough people about, you can't watch movies or anything or any virtual experience. You have to live it for yourself to truly understand it. And it was raising kids and going to combat. I had it starting a business to that one a few years ago, because you really can't. You can read all these little books or whatever's out there, and unless you live it out day to day, and when you put your head down at night and you're just like, oh my gosh, like people's payroll depends on me, and like I've got to grow this, and I've got to make sure I have new opportunities and all those things. So that's great, and I love that. But there's nothing compares to I won't say the satisfaction, I'll say the joy. The joy that you feel in your heart when you see things take shape for his kingdom that he's laid on your heart. And he's spent years, I mean, all the way back to, when I thought I was going to seminary and I was going to be this preacher, the road to get to where he wanted me to be. And I know there's more road to go down, where I'm going to go over the next 20 to 30 years, who knows? But, you look back at those times and you're just like, man, why didn't that work out? Why didn't I get that job? Why didn't I go to seminary? Why didn't I do this? But then when things start to click into place and you start living your life and focusing on Jesus and getting in the Word and understanding and surrounding yourself with other Christians, men and women, you really start to feel that direction, that pull. It's like that tractor beam pulls a little bit harder, and you're just like, oh, okay, this is where it's at.
So, as you and I talked about, the vision for the ministry, and when you first, met with me, and you said, hey, we're gonna, you're thinking about starting this thing with, with the other John,
Yeah.
and you were kind of laying it out. A couple of things came to my mind, and it's even listening to you now talk about, your life story and your military history. And just, I have not been in the military, but ever since out of college, I've worked for the DoD through various programs or another. So I've been around.
Yeah, and you spent time overseas.
But the camaraderie that you talked about with the unit, right? With that, those brothers.
Oh yeah.
And the bonds that are made. I sense that when you transition out of the military and you don't quite have that close knit bond, you still have the bond,
right?
But you're no longer with them. And as men, I often wonder, it's like, is that a transition hard to make relationships? Because, as warriors, you've seen a lot of stuff. And as we were talking, you once told me maybe 4 or 5 years ago a story about the golden hour, and there was a certain flight that you were flying.
Oh yeah.
And I keep, as we're talking now, I just keep picturing, what you've seen in the reality of the world and what that leaves on you. And then when you come to civilian life, you don't have that network of support that you had when you were in the military.
Sure.
And so part of Lionhead is to come together as men, to have that camaraderie, but then to, like you said, to lean on each other.
Yep, absolutely.
So why don't you share a little bit about, you remember the story that you told me, or?
So, yeah, probably. There's a few of them out there, but the one that kind of echoes in my memory all the time, it was kind of a life-changing moment for me, and there was a few wild, difficult missions out there, but this one wasn't. I don't remember the specific mission. I just remember I went on. You're on first up. So first up, you're flying life, limb, or eyesight. So if you don't get there, somebody's losing one of those things. So it's urgent. So you're on first up, second up. And so second up does all the non-urgent stuff, moving patients around, whatever. But first up, you're going point of injury most of the time. And so we go on, you usually assume duty first thing in the morning, you relieve the other crew. And so we go on, and you're on for 24 hours, and you just kind of sit around all day, you try and sleep just in case you end up flying a lot at night. And that day, just kind of nothing really happened. And I didn't really sleep much. So, 'cause I don't sleep during the day, I generally can't unless I've been up all night. And so I made the mistake of being up all day. And about the time the sun goes down, that's the way it usually goes. Stuff starts popping off, and we start getting busy. And our missions weren't long. We weren't out for an hour or two. You're like 15 minutes, 30 minutes. You're, grab somebody, come back, drop them off, come back, shut down, or you're doing back to backs and you hit the FARP and, get gas and keep going, which was rare. We had pretty tight coverage when we were over there as far as aircraft spread around different spots. So we could get to the guys as fast as humanly possible, because that's the whole idea of the golden hour. What was a thing when medevac was established, if you can get someone to a higher level of care within an hour, their chance of survivability goes up like exponentially. The statistics are ridiculous. So if you can get somebody, so we were kind of positioned time wise to get to places on the battlefield that way. So anyway, it pops off, and we start flying these little missions all night, on and off, so even when you get back, you don't have time to, and it's hot, you're sweaty, you're nasty, so you don't really get a chance to sleep. So we were just on all night flying. And our last mission took us down, and we're sitting on the cash pad in Baghdad at the hospital, dropping our last patient off. Sun's coming up, we flip our NVGs up, and we're just like, okay, let's go home. We're tired, we're done, we're out hours. And all of a sudden, a call comes over the radio, and Baghdad at the time was broken up into zones, and they make a couple of call outs, and we're just like, oh no, we can't go back our normal route. We're just like, man, what do we do? And so there was a rule in the aircraft: if anybody felt uncomfortable, you wouldn't do a thing. And so everybody got a vote: crew chief, medic, pilots. And so there was a spot we could go fly through, kind of weren't supposed to, and we're just like, hey, we can get home faster if we go this way. And everybody's just like, yeah, man, let's go. We're tired. We're done. Like, everybody's just waking up. It shouldn't be anybody out and around, take a shot at us. So we go that way, take off, uneventful, get around, and head back up to where we were stationed. And we land, and my roommate, super cool guy, is sitting in front of the ops shelter, and there's the plywood built deck out there that everybody had, like, in the various areas, because there were just rocks, and then there was sand, and when it rained, everything just turned to muck. So they built all these decks all over the place. So I'm walking up, I'm sweaty, I'm nasty, I'm exhausted. He's like, hey man, he's like, how was your night? And I was like, dude, it was busy. And I sit down, I don't even have my flight gear off, like, I still got my ALSI vest on, and I just plop down. He gives me a cup of coffee. And he's just like, you all right? And I was like, man, I'm good. And I was like, I'm just tired. And I was like, let me tell you something. I was like, there's nothing I'm going to do for the rest of my life that's going to hold a candle to this. I was like, this is going to turn down the volume on everything. Because if we don't get to where we're supposed to go, that could cost somebody their life, some mother their son, some wife their husband, some husband their wife. Like, the implications are huge. I was like, there's nothing else I'm going to do in my life that's going to have those types of implications. And so I kind of carry that with me, like, in business. I don't get too wound up about it. I'm just like, hey, this doesn't work. Let's find something else. And now I've got such a settled mindset of God has it. And wherever he wants me to go, I'm good with that. If I told the guy about a year after I started my company, I was just like, if this goes away tomorrow, it's because God's got another plan for me. He wants me to do something else. I'll find a way to feed my family. I'm like, I'm not worried about that. I can always find a job. But a job's just a job. But what's my mission? And that's something I spoke on at Lionhead, a couple of weeks ago. What's your mission? What's your mission as a man? Like, what are you trying to accomplish? Is it to just gather up stuff and money? Or is it to change people's lives? Because changing people's lives is bringing them to Christ. That is eternity altering, not just life altering. It'll change your life, but it changed your trajectory to eternity. And that's the mission that matters. Well, everything else is just kind of noise, man. But leading your family, doing the best you can to lead in the workplace is not do the best you can, but lead as a Christian man in the workplace. It can be difficult. It can have its pitfalls. You can have people be like, and you got to be careful about it. You got to do it the right way. But I always said when we started, like the name of my company is Foundation Defense Services. And we wanted a Christian name. We wanted something, but we didn't want it in your face. And the foundation portion is, it's funny when I say the name, sometimes people are like, oh, you do foundation work. And I'm just like on a home. I'm like, no, man. I was like, it's a government contracting company. But I was like, the foundation is, what's the foundation of your life? And so if people ask me about what does FDS mean? And I tell them, and I said, the foundation is, what is the foundation of the founders? I said, myself and my business partner is our Christian faith. And we just hope that anybody who encounters us maybe sees something a little bit different. And there's plenty of companies in town that are just like us. There's plenty of great Christian companies out there, or that have not Christian companies, but men who are Christians that lead these organizations and set the environment that way. So, I mean, my previous employer, I told those guys when I left, I said, I hate that I'm going, but I had to experience you guys' culture before I could start my own company, because they're like the Chick-fil-A of the defense industry. These guys are great. But I hated to go, but I had to have that experience. It's just like I always talk about. You look back and you're just like, why did I have to do that? And that was one of those, man, I'm glad I did that, because I turned that job down like twice before I finally took it. But you were part of that story.
One of the things that resonates, continues to resonate as, with Lionhead Ministry is, a lot of the folks who are coming, have previous military, right? And they've had different experiences throughout their career, whether they're, and some of them, well, most of us all have wounds, whether they're combat related, physical wounds, mental wounds, family wounds. And what's been really cool for me to be a part of the ministry with you is to see really strong men be able to be vulnerable yet remain strong and get to lean on each other.
Right.
And as they share their story with us, and we investigate, what does it mean to be a kingdom man? What does it mean to be a good husband? What does it mean to be obedient to the Lord? And you even said it's like, hey, whatever you want, I'm going to do it, Lord. And you talked about how at that moment, in Baghdad in Iraq, that you said, well, this is the high point of I'm paraphrasing, of your purpose and mission. And as you said that, I was thinking, but man, think of all the lives that you get to touch now, working with other folks, in the missions, and then the other men who get to talk to other folks. The Lord's purpose is so vast and infinite, and it's like you said, we don't know what the future is, and we often don't see it in the moment, but we get to see some of that path that he's laid out for us as we look back, and we're like, oh, that's why I had to do this. Oh, that's where I was shaped. And so, the ministry that you've got going, it's amazing. Even now with the college folks, I have the pleasure of having your son in my small group, and he's awesome, by the way.
No, I
And
appreciate
he keeps up with us old curmudgeons, and although we go to lunch at Mozzarella,
Right. Yeah.
and we order the cinnamon rolls, and usually way too much because
they've come home a couple of times.
Yeah, because we realize, we've got, insulin problems, but hey, we're going to give them,
give them to the young guy.
to Will. But, speaking of Will, so I did ask him for some questions for you.
Okay.
And so first I want to talk about your love of golf. You're a golfer, right?
I am. I recently took the game back up about 2 years ago off a 20-year break. So I grew up playing golf down in Florida. Not great or anything. Just played a lot because it's Florida and there's tons of golf courses. And it was something to do when I was young and didn't have a driver's license. So, but yeah, I play some golf.
And so, so Will's working at the local country club.
Yes,
right?
he is.
And he's doing pretty well there. And recently he said that he enjoyed time golfing with you, and that he wanted me to ask you about what it felt like to have your son beat you in golf?
That's hilarious. Yeah. So the reason he beat me is it was Father's Day. So we did a 2v2 scramble. So it was my older two boys against myself and my youngest. So 21 and 18 against old guy and 13-year-old. So, and my 13-year-old doesn't really play golf. He really likes driving the golf cart, but he doesn't like playing golf. And then my other son is a pretty good golfer. So it was really me against my other son. So Will did hit some good shots, but his brother kind of carried a little bit.
Oh, okay. All right. And then I do have one more question. So and I don't know, maybe I don't know if the folks listening are tracking this same controversy, but there seems to be either on the internet or even in your personal life, it's Michael Jordan versus LeBron James.
Oh my gosh.
And so if you want to unpack a little bit about that story, I think it's really impacted the family and maybe you to some degree. And maybe we could just understand what that looks like.
Sure. Yeah, there's a little controversy in our house of LeBron or Michael Jordan. So, as a kid who grew up with Michael Jordan playing, I got to have the pleasure of seeing him play one time. And just, you even see the clips all over YouTube and Instagram and everything. I mean, Michael Jordan was just such a dominant force in basketball. And then, there's LeBron James, which he is a great player. Don't get me wrong, but I'll sound like such an old guy. It's like the game's not the same. The players aren't the same. You don't have the Dennis Rodmans and the Patrick Ewings, these guys that are just, out there tearing it up. I mean, it was a lot rougher in my mind back then, but I don't really watch basketball anymore. I do just see a lot of clips of LeBron laying on the ground, looking up to see if, is somebody going to call a foul or whatever. And you see all the bloopers of him kind of taking a dive. And, I get that in soccer, but I guess it's become a part of basketball. I just could never see Michael Jordan falling on the ground, kind of rolling around, and you later see the clip that he wasn't even touched. Like he's gonna more turn around and get in your face, and just a different style of player, different style of leader, I would say, for their team. You learn more about somebody by listening to the people who they either work with or play with on their team. And you listen to Michael Jordan's teammates, man, they got nothing but incredible things to say about the guy as a player and how he just, drove to greatness and drove others to greatness too. It's kind of like Tom Brady. You put people on his team and Peyton Manning, same thing. He'll make you a Super Bowl champion because that's what those guys do. They make everybody around themselves greater, like better. They cause people to elevate their games. So, and LeBron may do that, but, just kind of falling on the ground thing. It's not my thing. So, yeah, it's just kind of a running joke. My kids like to poke at me. They're like, oh, Dad, LeBron James is the best. I'm like, you guys, give me a break. They just like to poke at me because they know it gets me irritated, even though I'm not really a basketball fan. I'm a hockey guy.
Yeah, that's awesome. So, I guess do you want to talk about what we have coming up from, just some potential podcasts?
Yeah. So, I mean, our goal is to release every 2 weeks, is what we're aiming for. So whether we do an interview or we bring up a topic that maybe is spoken on in the Bible study that we have that goes on every 2 weeks. And, but some of the guys we have coming on, so we've got a couple of, retired former helicopter pilots that have some pretty incredible experience. We got one guy who's on active duty right now, who has an incredible story. He's working on getting approval to come on. So also got some other people that are in government leadership. We've got some former professional athletes that we're trying to get on. So it's not just going to be a bunch of, us and our friends and, putting people on. We're really trying to reach out and expand. And all these guys, it's not what they did. It's what they did while being a Christian man, being a Christian man in professional sports. And there's a lot of great stuff. I mean, like if you look at the U.S. men's soccer team, I mean, those guys are praying after every game. Somebody's leading that. Somebody's bringing that. I mean, you hear it in the NFL all the time. Certain teams, you get certain guys on those squads, so but there's a lot of stuff to fall into when you've got that kind of money and you're around those different types of things. So it'll be interesting to hear that, and some of the guys we're talking to about potentially coming on that are in government leadership. Just what does that mean to be in politics today? As there's a lot of people. I mean, we're here in Alabama. Every political ad is like, well, I'm a Christian. I'm a better Christian. They get their pastor on there to back them up. It's like, come on, guys, just dial it back a second. But some of these guys I know personally, and it'll be interesting to have them come on. And so I think we got a pretty good lineup. So, and we're just going to evolve it. And, as we get these guys on, we're going to get additional recommendations and, find other people to talk about or talk with and interview and just get their perspective. And, if anything we've learned through hearing these testimonies in the biweekly Bible study that we do, or as we get through these interviews and talk with people, I think people are going to they're going to realize that we're just all not that different, and none of us are clean and squeaky. Kind of the cleanest and squeakiest looking are usually the dirtiest in the bunch. A lot of times it's just, we've all got something, but God's got a way to refine us and take us in the state that we're in when we're willing and do things for the glory of his kingdom. And that's the biggest thing that we're about. It's like, how do we further his kingdom? How do we get people just to realize, man, there's so much in this world that you can chase. And I tell this story all the time, and I don't even know how true it is. I think I've heard parts of it from Deion Sanders, but I'm pretty sure I saw it on YouTube or something like that, and I might be messing it up, of course. But where he won the Super Bowl and goes back to his room, orders a Lamborghini on the phone, and then just sits down and cries. Dude had reached the pinnacle of sports. I mean, he just Major League Baseball player, professional football player, and great at both, and was just achieving all these things. I remember watching him when he played at Florida State, because I grew up a Florida State fan, and watching Prime play at Florida State under Bobby Bowden, and I mean, just all the flash and how fast he was, and playing for the Falcons, and all the things that he did. And at that moment, he had kind of achieved everything and realized he had nothing. And I think a lot of people just spend their whole life chasing stuff. And at that time, he broke down and cried and, reaffirmed his, faith in Jesus. And he's been using his platform to bring young men to Jesus in coaching, or through his coaching. So I just, find your mission, find that thing that, can connect you to other men, and then bring that message. Don't shy away from it. I mean, if you feel led to go stand on the corner and preach, hey, that's going to get to somebody at some point. But a lot of times it's just conversations in the workplace. I mean, I had a conversation this morning. I went over to do a business meeting with two guys. One guy I know real well. He comes to Lionhead on Thursdays, and there was another guy in the room. Never heard about it. And so the one guy that comes to the Bible study, he's like, hey, man, when you guys release your next podcast? And the guy's like, oh, you guys do a podcast? I used to do a podcast. The other guy backed out. I really want to get back into it. What's your podcast about? So I start telling him. All of a sudden, here's Lionhead. We're meeting tomorrow at 6 o'clock in the morning. Hey, man, I think I'm going to be there. Send me the link to your podcast. And it's just like that. And I don't know this guy. I don't know his background. But, that's just simple conversations and in the willingness. And the thing is, we don't have to solve how to bring the message. We just have to be available, and God's going to do it. We don't have to turn around and be like, all right, I got to witness to this person. I've got to, and then you turn around and it doesn't work out. And you're just like, the person's like, I don't want to hear this nonsense. And then you're just like, oh, I failed. Like, why isn't God working through me? You just got to let him use you and just be available and be ready, and he'll make it happen, because in the end, it's his kingdom, and he's going to steer us in the direction, and he's going to put people in our path, and sometimes it doesn't always work out, but you never know what seeds get planted that might happen years and years later.
No, I agree 100%. Sometimes the hardest thing for us to do as men is to be obedient and just to be available. And just how you said that, that's he's got the plan. He has the opportunity. He's inviting us to participate. And often we're looking at, well, how can I do this? And he's like, hey,
It's control.
it's right here, brother.
What do we want to do as men? We want to solve problems. We want to fix things. We want to control things. And the hardest thing to do is just be like, what do you want me to do? I got it. Just steer me. So yeah, it's not easy.
I'm looking forward to tomorrow morning, nice and early.
Yeah,
It'll be a good one,
absolutely.
and looking forward to our next podcast.
Yep, we're looking forward to it. So again, we'll be out here probably working on publishing every 2 weeks. So like, subscribe, all those great and wonderful things. It's our first run at video, so the last one we just did audio. So it'll be more of this. Might change our background up. Who knows? But yeah, no, I appreciate it.
Swag on the website.
Yeah, so we're working on that. We've got a couple of shirts out there with the Lionhead logo on it for the ministry, and then we have the Lionhead Forge logo that you see on Spotify and YouTube and all the different streaming services. So we're working on those. We're going to clean them up a little bit, and then we'll post them on there. And the sales, 100% of the sales, because nobody in Lionhead gets paid, so it's a nonprofit, and all the money goes back into the ministry and the mission and everything that we're trying to do. So yep, hopefully we'll have that up and running in the next month or so.
Awesome. Well, thank you for sharing your story today.
Absolutely.
And thank you for being obedient to the vision the Lord placed on your heart. And I know it's been many years coming, but it's awesome to see how it's unfolding.
You couldn't go back to 10 years ago me and said, hey man, we'll be sitting here doing this podcast and have this ministry. I'd have been like, how's that going to happen? Like, really? But here we are. So hope you enjoyed it. Look forward to talking with you guys again. And, feel free to comment in the section and, visit our website, lionheadministries.com. So there's a lot of great information on there. So appreciate it. And we'll see you guys soon.